What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to make a video about PayPal again. So last video we made about PayPal we released basically this weekend, and we went over price targets for PayPal and where we think the stock is going. If you haven't seen that video, go back and check it out. But short story short, basically based off the numbers and based off what we're seeing from analysts, we found a price target of around $185 to $190 is kind of what we're seeing in there. In this video though, I want to go over basically the bull versus bear case and actually take PayPal's metrics, what they've done for revenue, user growth, things like that, and basically place them into two categories and say, do we think this is a bullish indicator or do we think this is a bearish indicator? And look at that as an evaluation of the stock and where we think it might be going in the future. So if you like this video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. So I found this one article and basically they lay out a lot of these metrics all in one place, and they're for the 2022 basically numbers like you're seeing. So this was published February 3rd of 2022. So a little less than a month ago. And basically I checked some of these metrics and they all seem up to date. So overall, everything's kind of good and laid out here in a very good fashion. So we're going to start here by actually looking at revenue. So you can see just from the chart, this goes back all the way to 2010, that revenue has just been consistently going up. And over the last couple of years, you kind of have a flat period in here from 2020 to 2021, but overall it's been just consistent growth really for the past kind of 3 years, which is kind of what you want to look at. You don't really want to look at kind of a short-term time frame like that because it doesn't really tell you a whole lot. When you zoom out and look at the whole picture, you can see that there's consistent growth. And what I have highlighted here is 2019, 2020, and 2021. Because really you can see as this is really that transition point that we saw in the market, right? We saw 2019 come around, and then basically at the end of 2019, everything was good, everything was going great. And then obviously 2020, we had that pullback early in the year, but there was a lot of conversion over to online sales. So it's really big to look at how these numbers were affected. So here you have about a little less than a $4 billion increase in revenue, and then again you have a little less than a $4 billion increase in revenue here. So there's still growing revenue, and that's a huge clip, especially when you look at 2018 and 2017. So 2017 to 2018 you only have 2 billion, and then 2018 to 2019 you only have a little over 2 billion. So overall, right, they're increasing their actual growth of revenue. So what I would take this metric, I would take revenue, and I would say that this is a bullish indicator for PayPal stock. So next up, we have profitability. So how profitable is PayPal? So PayPal, you can see over the last couple of years, they've had $4 billion in profit. But 2019, 2018, they were only at $2 billion. So you can see 17 to 18, you only have a $200 million increase in basically profit. And then 2018 to 2019, you only have a $400 million increase in profit. But then 2019 to 2020, you have almost a $2 billion increase in profit. And then 2020 to 2021, again, you have actually a slight decrease in profit. So over the last 3 to 4 years, you've seen, right, the profitability of PayPal increase significantly. But over the last kind of year to 2 years, you've kind of seen it level off. So overall, right, that could be kind of a little bit concerning for the business. But the question is, do you see it regressing, right? If it were to regress back to this $2 billion mark, then that would be a huge red flag. But right now, this is almost kind of a neutral indicator. It's almost like you need to see how things play out, because it really doesn't command a huge valuation. There's obviously going to be an increase in valuation, but if anything, this kind of leads back to, right, the increase in stock price that we talked about, where it's probably closer to that 185 is actually a fair value based off this increase in profitability. So overall, I'd kind of give profitability a neutral rating. It's more bullish, probably more leaning to the bullish side, but if they kind of regress or stay stable for an extended amount of time, then that's kind of a negative sign for what should be a growth company like PayPal. So here we have transactions. So PayPal total transactions, basically you can look at the numbers here. So 2018 to 2019, they had a little less than $3 billion increase in transactions. 2019 to 2020, you had again about a 3 billion increase in transactions, and then 2020 to 2021 you had about a 4 billion increase in transactions. So overall, I would say this is a bullish indicator. You're kind of seeing consistent growth. It's consistently going up. Obviously, the growth isn't it's decreasing percentage wise slightly, but overall that just happens when you have a larger company that's becoming larger over time. So they're still going in the right direction, getting more transactions, and overall I see that as a positive thing. So I would say this is a bullish indicator. Next up here, we have their operating margin. So what you can see and what's kind of noticeable to me is, right, starting in 2016, they actually had a 20% operating margin, and they slowly actually worked it up. So they worked it up from 20% to 21%, 22, 23, all the way up to 24% in 2020, which 2020 obviously was a great year, but this long-term kind of trend of being able to increase it 1% is very telling. So you kind of would have expected 2021 to, right, continue that trend or stable off. However, it decreased. So they actually went all the way back down to 21%. So a 3% decrease from 2020. And that's actually in line with their 2017 numbers. So overall, I would say operating margin, this is kind of a bearish indicator. It's not overly concerning, but it is trending in the wrong direction. So another metric we have here for PayPal is probably the single-handedly most important metric that they have, and that is PayPal users. So obviously the more users that they have, the more transactions they're going to get, the more money they're going to make. Overall, right, as a kind of more growth focused company in this sector, PayPal should really have a high focus on users, and really the investor should have a high focus on users. So what you're seeing here is they've had basically great growth over time. So again, if we go back to 2016, 197 million, up kind of 30,000 here to 120 or 227 million, and then up 40,000 here in 2018 to 267 million, and then another almost 40 million here to 305 in 2019, and then they had a huge jump here from 2019 to 2020, and that is of over 70 million users basically in 2020 that they jumped from 2019. So that is absolutely enormous growth there. That's huge for a company like that, especially of this size. And then for 2021, they actually only had around a 50 million increase. So compared to some of these earlier increases, 50 million is still a great number of users to increase by. But when you're comparing against 2020, which is compared against 2019, obviously that growth is slightly different, right? You're only seeing a 70 million, or you're seeing a 70 million increase from 2019 to 2020, where you're only seeing a 50 million increase from 2020 to 2021. So again, I wouldn't say this is a negative. I wouldn't necessarily put this in the bullish or bearish category. I would say it's kind of somewhere in between. Again, if users start decreasing significantly, personally, I don't think 50 million is obviously a significant decrease. I think you had a huge spike in 2020, and that's going to happen when years and 1 in 100 year events kind of happen. But overall, right, they're still having more growth than they did in 2018, 2017, when they were a lot kind of younger company. So overall, I think this is kind of more on the bullish side than the bearish side, but it's still something that you kind of need to be aware of when you're investing in the stock. And then the last one down here, which is super important as well, is how many transactions are you having per account? So overall, this is a huge indicator, because, right, if you have more accounts and more people are actually performing more transactions, basically it's saying that the users that you are getting are actually becoming more and more engaged over time and using the platform of PayPal basically more often. So what you're seeing is that that trend is actually consistent. So they've kind of increased the number of transactions every year, except for 2019 into 2020, which is very interesting because, right, you had that huge number boost from 29 in active users that we just talked about from 2019 to 2020. There was 70 million users, but your transactions per user actually stayed consistent, which that could be just offsetting, right? Your old users that are very comfortable with the platform, they might have used it 50 times, but because you got so many young and new users that aren't super familiar with the platform, they might have used basically PayPal less often. So that's kind of something that you can kind of offset in there. But then 2020 to actually 2021, you saw it increase by 5 transactions, an average of 5 transactions per account. So that is a huge increase in there, and overall really positive thing. So I would say that this is a bullish indicator for PayPal stock. So overall, when we look at kind of all these indicators, I think there's a lot more bullish things going for PayPal. The real thing, and what's really interesting to look at is, right, a lot of these numbers that we're looking at, you can see kind of what happened in 2019, and you see that they had an explosion of growth, right? Explosion of growth not only in the stock price that you're seeing here, but also in a lot of those metrics. A lot of those metrics exploded over 2020, and they're still kind of consistently trending in that direction. So it's hard to believe that, right, the stock is worth the same as it was in 2019. They've had all this growth in users, they've had all these growths in transactions, revenue, kind of everything almost across the board has shown growth over the last 2 years. And for you to say that the stock is still only worth what it was in 2019 is kind of just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Personally, I haven't bought any PayPal shares, so it's just something that I'm still looking into, still considering. I think there's a lot of upside. Again, go back and watch the video that I did over the price target analysis. It has some interesting kind of data in there of where we could potentially see the stock going over the next kind of year to 2 years. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day.